The fastest way to pull yourself out of the day-to-day operations of any business is the discipline that you have while you're working in that business. By the way, discipline is also the fastest way to generate more profit and keep more control of whatever business it is that you're operating. But just telling you to be more disciplined, that doesn't really give you anything. The question is, how do you become more disciplined, and how do you figure out what it is that you need to be more disciplined in? So in this video, I'm going to share with you 3 parts of, we'll call it a framework, that helped me become more disciplined over my course of 2 decades as an entrepreneur. And by the way, my name is Brent. I run a commercial real estate services company that does just under $2 million a year with 34% EBITDA. And the whole thing takes me about 90 minutes to run. The rest of the time I spend making videos like this to help founders like you save 10 to 12 hours a week, every single week, within the course of about 24 weeks. So let's talk about discipline, because that's the whole purpose of this video. And really it comes down to 3 separate parts, and you're going to find that they work in a progression. And that progression, once you finish it, you're going to be doing a lot more of the things that you already know you need to be doing, but you're not doing right now. My bet is that if I gave you 15 minutes and a piece of paper and said, write down everything that you know you should be doing in your business right now, but you're not doing, you probably wouldn't need 15 minutes to do that. You'd probably fill up the page really fast. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It means you're absolutely normal. It's something everybody does, because most of the time we're just running so fast and we're trying to get so many things done, be all things to all people, that we don't pause long enough to see, like, all right, what is it that I'm not doing that I know that I should be doing? If you figure that out, then right there we start with, what is it that makes it not like discipline that I'm doing? So let's start out with an assessment. And that's the first part of the framework, because we've got to figure out where it is that you're not being disciplined. And the way that I always figured that out was I looked at my stated intentions, the things that I said that I was going to do. And then I'd look at my actions based on the stated intention. And based on my action, I would figure out what my real intention was. So let me give you an example of how that whole thing works. So let's say that my stated intention was that I wanted to get my sales closing rate up to 45%. Let's say that that's what I wanted to do. But then I looked at my actions, and my actions did not include reviewing all of my sales calls, or learning new sales frameworks, or running live fire with my sales team, or even with my wife. Like, if I wasn't doing any of those things, then I needed to look and see if my stated intention was actually what I was doing and what I actually meant to have happen. And in that case, it would be very clear to say that my stated intention was to get to a 45% closing rate, but my actions really told me that I wasn't, and that wasn't the highest priority. It doesn't mean that it's not a priority. It just means that the intention wasn't really true. So every time we say something that we want to be able to do, we've got to see if it's being backed up by our actions. And the simplest way to do that is just assess it without any judgment. And that's the hardest part of that, is to do that without judging yourself or feeling bad because you weren't doing the things that you know you needed to do. Just realize everybody does it. The first step to fixing any problem is to realize that you have one. By going through it this way, in the way that I just laid out for you there, by stated intention, action, and then understanding true intention, is it just tells you where to look. That's the whole purpose of understanding what that looks like, right? So in the larger context of this, we're talking about discipline. Discipline really equals time freedom. And if you feel like you need more time freedom, then you can grab a 48-hour founder time reset that I built for free, and you can go through it within the first 5 days or so. You're going to find 3 hours of junk work that you can clear off your calendar right away. You can do it this week, and you can do that for free. Just click the link in the video below. But let's get back to talking about discipline here, because the second thing that we need to do, or that I did when I was figuring out, like, all right, how do I get myself to do more of these things that I really don't want to do or don't feel like doing, is I had to count the cost of inaction. Most of the time, what I thought was that if I was stagnant, if I just stayed in the exact same spot that I'm in right now, then I was safe. And I started to realize that everything in the world was moving around me at the pace that it was moving. And so it was like a big, like cold bucket of water on the head to realize that no, you're not safe if you're not making progress. So there's a massive cost to not doing anything and not making anything better in terms of my own operations. So the easiest way that I've figured this out, because this is really about like, hey, what are we playing for here? What's the value of the thing that I need to get myself to do that I'm not doing right now? Simplest way to do that is take one sheet of paper, draw a line right down the middle of the piece of paper, and then on the left side, write pain of acting. And then I want you to come up with a list. And this is exactly what I did. A list of everything that I thought was going to be painful about the action that I knew that I needed to take. So let's use the stated intention again of increasing my closing ratio to 45% when I was selling something. So what are the pains of acting in my perception? Well, I was going to need to be uncomfortable. I was going to need to get told no a lot. I was going to need to redirect my focus away from fulfillment to learning more about sales, like all these different things that I perceived to be painful. And painful isn't like physical pain. That's not the list that I'm talking about here at all. It is just painful in that it causes you some distress. And it's something that would make you resist doing it. That's the big thing. So create that list that's just under pain of acting. Now you still have one other side of the page. That next side of the page, the opposite of the pain of acting, at the top, put pain of not acting. And then write out all the things that could and would go wrong if you didn't take the action that you know you needed to take. Now, there's a trick with this because our brains naturally want to protect themselves. And so there's a tendency to say like, yeah, but that could never happen to me. And the easy way that I look at that is that, nobody who's ever gotten to be 30 pounds overweight thought it was going to happen to them. Nobody who's ever had a company pulled out from underneath them by an investor that they thought was, buying a chunk of it, they didn't intend to have that happen. Anybody who's been divorced, they didn't intend to have that happen. They said, that's never going to happen to me. So the trick is to let your mind go there of the possibilities of what could possibly happen if you don't take action. So this is the pain of not acting. So use again the example of getting the sales closing ratio up to 45%. The pain of not acting, man, what happens if I can't get the closing rate up to 45%? Well, then, man, our revenue goes down, which means that I can't afford to pay the people that I need to pay in order to do the work that I'm trying to sell. And if I can't pay the people who I'm trying to get to do the work because I'm trying to sell this stuff, that means I'm going to have to do more of the work. That means that I am going to have to spend more time at the office. That means I'm going to spend less time with my family. That means my family is going to start to get pissed off at me for not being there. That means I'm going to have to go to marriage counseling. And that may mean that I'm going to need to be in divorce. And that means she's going to take half of my money and I'm going to live in a one-bedroom apartment alone. Whew, holy shit. If you can get yourself there, that will get you to act in every single situation. So now you've got your two sides of this sheet, pain of acting, pain of not acting. And what you're very clearly going to see is two things. First, there's a massive gap between how much pain you're going to experience by acting versus how much pain you're going to experience by not acting. The second thing you're going to realize is that you have short-term versus long-term pain. So the pains of acting, those are all going to be short-term things. They're going to be things that are going to suck for maybe a week or a month or maybe a couple of months. But the things that are the pains of not acting, those are things that are going to suck for a year or a decade or even longer than that. So that will really get you into gear, because I know it got me into gear if you go through that little process right there. The third thing, once you've got that done, so far we've got the assessment, where do we need to be more disciplined? And then 2 is the counting of the pain of acting and count the costs of all that, which is kind of the motivation to do this. Then this next thing is how are we going to actually get done the things that we've been avoiding doing? We've gotten psychological leverage, but now let's talk about tactically, how can we go about this and get ourselves to do the things that we know we need to do and we're not doing right now? Or how do we get ourselves to stop doing the things that we already know are detrimental, but for some reason we're doing them anyway? The easiest way that I've found to do this is with what I call an environmental assist. So your office, your house, wherever you are, that's an environment. How can we get the environment to assist you in doing the things or stopping doing the things that you know you need to do? So this all comes down to friction. So let's take a look at the things that you need to stop doing. So let's use an example. Let's say that you need to stop doom scrolling Instagram when otherwise you're at your desk and you should be working, right? Happens to people all the time because it's designed to be addictive. So let's say that's the thing that you realize, I really got to stop doing this because I looked at my screen time for the last week and man, I'm spending 2 hours a day looking at that thing. All right, cool. First, don't judge yourself for doing that. Second thing is create friction. And the tiniest amount of friction will do. So let's say that you doom scroll Instagram and that's what you want to stop. The friction for that could be not keeping your phone on your desk with you, but keeping your phone on a desk or a shelf or whatever that you have to physically get up and walk to go do it. That little bit of friction, that's enough for human beings to not take an action that they know is bad for them. You can actually leverage this up by using your own name and then saying the thing you're doing and the negative consequences of the thing you're doing. That kind of pulls it from this non-reality where it's just in our head into like physical reality, which is all around us all the time. So in this example, Brent, you are picking up your phone and you are scrolling Instagram. That does not serve the type of business that you want to build because you're getting distracted all the time. If you hear your own voice say your own name and a negative consequence attached to it, most of the time it's just going to get you to stop doing the thing. So friction in the smallest form of I got to get up to go do something that I know I shouldn't be doing, that's going to kill like 80 to 90% of you doing that thing because of that little bit of friction. Look at the opposite side. So these are things that we want to actually start doing. So things that need to happen that just, they're not. But we want them to start happening. So we decrease friction. Because remember, this part about environmental assist, the key word here is friction. It's just, are we adding it or are we taking it away? So the things that we want to do, we simply have to remove the friction that exists between us and doing the thing to make it easier. Let's say that a weekly review of KPIs, your key performance indicators, is something that you really feel like you want to start doing. And for whatever reason, you haven't been doing that. Well, the easiest way to do that is to have somebody on your team send them to you every week at a specific amount of time so you don't have to go search them. That's the simplest form of that. You're removing the friction of having to physically go do it. You're taking it, making it easier by having it delivered towards you. More likely you're going to do it. To use another example, like in the fitness space, because I guess everybody gets that, is let's say you struggled to get up in the morning and go do a morning workout. If you have your clothes laid out that you're going to wear the next day to go work out, your shoes, your shorts, your t-shirt, whatever, you're more likely to go do that than you would be if you had to hunt it down. It might seem like a super small thing, but just removing that little bit of friction is enough to make you actually go do the thing because it doesn't seem as hard. So do not discount the environmental assist. So 3 things I talked about today. All these things are things that I've used forever, things that have really helped me run my company in 90 minutes a week, knowing that we've got to be disciplined in the business to be able to pull ourselves out of it so we can work on the business. First is the assessment, figuring out where is it that you need to be more disciplined? And all you're doing is looking at your stated intentions, matching those with your actions without judging yourself, and then figuring out what your true intention was. This is the assessment. It tells you what you need to do. Once you know what you need to do, figure out the pain of acting and the pain of not acting, recognizing that that gap should psychologically be a lot towards getting you to do the thing that you already know that you need to do. And the last part is, are we either adding friction because we want to stop an action, or are we removing friction because we want to start doing one? So you probably heard Jocko Willink talk about this in the concept of discipline equals freedom. And we've been talking about discipline in this book. I would make the argument that it's easier for him to be disciplined because he had a whole team of guys around him, plus a whole bunch of instructors, so on and so forth. For you as an entrepreneur, it is much more difficult to be disciplined because nobody's looking after you. You're the owner. You're the backstop. You're the guy that either gets it done or doesn't, which you would think would naturally provide you with discipline, but a lot of times it doesn't. And so hopefully this framework allowed you to do this. But Jocko does say something that I think is really true, which is discipline equals freedom, though I'm going to add one word to it. Discipline does not equal just freedom. Discipline equals time freedom when we talk about people that are running companies that are between $1.5 million and $5 million in revenue. So if you want to free up your first 10 to 12 hours, if you want 10 to 12 hours every single week of junk work off of your plate, then the first step to doing that is getting 3 hours back this week. I mentioned a little earlier in the video that I have built a free tool. So it's not something you have to learn. It's just something that you have to plug into your existing system. I built a free tool that's going to show you where your first 3 hours of tasks that you can clear off your calendar every single week, you can find those 3 hours this week. It takes about 4 days of doing it, maybe 30 minutes worth of work total, but you're going to identify 3 hours that you can remove permanently from your task list every single week, and you can start doing that this week. Click the link in this video to be able to download your free version of that tool. And that's all I've got for you today. I'll see you on the next video.